What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Real Talk podcast with Liam Kritikal Powers. I've got a very special guest on the show today. He's a singer-songwriter from Manchester. He's an amazing artist with a massive back catalogue of music, and he's written songs for Simon Cowells' label SYCO and toured with Emeli Sandé. I've had the privilege of working with him on several community music projects with Inspired Youth Arts, big up Kev Curran. And we did a track for Papyrus called Paper Wings, and most recently Change, Grow, Live with the Domino Effect. Jake Mattison, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you very much, mate. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Now we've got over that audio problem. It's nice to see you. Nice to speak to you.
Yeah, you too. It's technology, isn't it? This is the issue.
Yeah.
It's the matrix we're trapped in, man.
Yeah. There's two musicians that can't get the sound right for a podcast.
Literally, yeah. First of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, mate. Yeah, doing good. Doing good. Do you like this time of year?
Not really, because I think, because it's dark all the time.
Yeah.
So I remember working night shifts at a Premier Inn Man back in the day, and I'd go to work and it was pitch black, and then come home and it's pitch black.
Yeah.
And I always felt a bit down at this time of year.
Yeah.
But yeah, what about you?
I don't like it, but I feel different this year. I feel a little bit different. It feels less intense for me because I had that thing when I was younger doing factory work and stuff like that, and you clock in when it's dark and then you clock out when it's dark, and all you see is like just rainy streets and like rainy dark streets all the time. But for some reason this year I feel a little bit better and a little bit more optimistic and not as down in the dumps.
That's good. What do you think the reason for that is?
I've no idea whatsoever, because my life's not particularly that different. I think it's just maybe it's just a mindset. Do you know what I mean? Maybe it's just a mindset thing. I'm not saying I've got like I was just about to say to you, I'm not too much into gratitude and stuff like that, but that's bullshit. I am. so I try and do a lot of gratitude and try and do a lot of like a bit of quiet time and stuff like that. So I think that's having an effect on me, and I feel a lot better.
Yeah, I think that's really important, man. Like, especially because we deal with music and sound, but I find that the world is just so loud, and it's all noise that I don't like hearing. Do you know what I mean? Like, nothing's ever really quiet, is it? So I think that's why when you make music, you're just in your own little world, aren't you? You get to be who you truly are, and that's what I love about music. I think it takes you out of the rat race that we're in all the time.
Yeah, and especially for like, for anything mental health related, especially when you're making music or like you're performing or whatever, it's like ultimate concentration, isn't it? So that overthinking side and all that just goes because you've got something right in front of you that needs seeing to every second, haven't you, when you're doing music, and especially when you're producing and performing, it's like it takes you away from all that distraction and that.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really powerful thing, man. Like, I feel sorry for people who've never really done it, to be fair, because I've never really found anything else that's done that.
Yeah. I think creativity in general is just, I think that's why I think initially, there's that desire to create, isn't there? But I mean, I think that desire to create, obviously comes from wanting to express yourself and then wanting to communicate, doesn't it? But I think once you're in that flow of creating, it becomes addictive because it's a positive way of channeling your mind into something that has purpose rather than just listening to all that noise and all that nonsense.
Yeah, 100%, man. Well, thank you for your time, Jake. I really appreciate it.
No, it's a pleasure, mate. It's a pleasure.
So I'd like to get into it from the very beginning, really. So could you just let us know, like, where you were born and what your childhood was like? What was your upbringing like?
So I was born in Stockport, Greater Manchester, and suppose at the beginning, like my childhood was, if I can remember being young, my childhood was like pretty idyllic from being very young. Um, Me, my brother, my mum and dad were still together. We lived with my grandparents as well. Um, from looking back now, we didn't have no money, but that didn't matter. Do you know what I mean? It was like we were kind of like a big family. There's more adults than there was kids, but we were a big family, and we were quite content, and it was quite idyllic for me. And then there was a period of around about kind of 9 or 10. I won't go into it too much because fear, for fear of upsetting people. But I mean, like, everything was good until it wasn't. Do you know what I mean? And then things started to go wrong. My mum became like a single parent. We ended up being homeless, and then we were kind of I say I wasn't doing anything. I was just being a kid doing nothing. Do you know what I mean? But my mum like fighting to kind of find us accommodation, and then we then went to live with a friend, and then lived with a friend for a bit, and then went to live in a council flat, and in all that sort of stuff, there was other kind of shit going on with the family and stuff. So that's basically my childhood from being young. Yeah.
Okay, and what is it like growing up in Stockport? What is the area like?
So it's a mad area, Stockport, because we're Greater Manchester, and there's so many areas that border Manchester. So I lived in a place called Reddish, which borders Gorton, so that's got a Stockport. Where I live's got a Stockport postcode, but you walk like 2 minutes up the road and there's a Manchester postcode. So we border Manchester. So we kind of we like a little bit of culturally, we like a little bit of a little brother to a bit of a little less talented brother to Manchester. And we always kind of look to Manchester culturally. Do you know what I mean? But also in the same respect as Salford's got its own thing, we also have this like a little bit of misguided pride as to where we're from. So like, you know, we're proud of being from Stockport, even though like, you know, we look to Manchester from a cultural point of view. So that's Stockport in a nutshell. And it's a bit of Stockport's a mad area as well, because I think it's probably, I don't know if this is right, I might be completely wrong, but I think it's the most economically diverse area in the UK, maybe. It's got the biggest poverty and the
Right.
biggest amount of wealth as well. So it's Stockport's SK postcode. So under SK, you've got all like these places like Wilmslow and places that are going off out into Cheshire where footballers live. You know, incredibly wealthy people. And then you've got places like Bridlington, which is like one of the most deprived places in the country.
Yeah, it's crazy, Manchester, man. Do you know, I've drove through there quite a few times, and I remember driving through. It was pretty much through the city centre, and it's a bit like Birmingham in a way. It reminded me of sort of the Midlands in that you you would go drive through one area, and it looked like it was a poverty-stricken area, but literally 2 minutes up the road, they're building massive new theatres and shopping complexes, and you can
Yeah, yeah.
tell a lot of money has been put into the centre of Manchester. And it's just an interesting observation because I think a lot of places are actually like that. You wouldn't think it's a bit like York, you know, like people think of York as just this really green, lovely looking area, and the town centre looks amazing and it's really nice, but actually, you go 5 minutes out of there and it's a different world.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. But Manchester, the city centre, is like it's unrecognisable to like what it was. Like when I was going out into the city centre all the time when I was younger, um, there was that real. It was run down. It was a run down city because we had the bombing like the 90s, where the IRA bombed like the Arndale and stuff like that, and the place was a bomb site. It pretty much stayed like that for years and years and years. And going out into the clubs then, it was so familiar to me, but people outside of Manchester, it was a little bit like, fucking hell, this is a bit this is a bit on top here because it was just one of them areas. It was just very run down, you know. But I was, you know, being from Greater Manchester, being like a Mancunian or Stopfordian or whatever, I was dead used to it, you know. But Manchester now is unrecognisable. You know, the amount of glass buildings everywhere, and you look round, and it's a big, you know, it's a big thriving city.
Definitely, man, and home to a lot of amazing artists as well. So I think that leads us on to really like at what point did you start making music? Like you said, obviously things were going on at home, um, maybe moving around a little bit. At what point do you pick up a guitar or realize that you're even interested in music?
I think I was a creative kid, so I think before I even picked up a musical instrument, I'd draw or like daydream a lot. Do you know what I mean? And I didn't. Music wasn't like a natural thing for me because I'm deaf. I'm deaf in my left ear. So I had this disease. It's called cholesteatoma. It's like this. I don't know what it is. Like some fucking like cancerous disease, and it eats away at your ear. So I had that when I was a kid, and there was nothing that they could do to save me ear. So they just took everything out. So music really wasn't the first thing for me. But I remembered distinctly, like I always liked music and listened to it, and I had my favourite songs and everything. But I found I found a cassette tape, and it was Marvin Gaye, What's Going On? And I listened to it, and it was like, you know, when I heard it, I was so like, I was young, like proper young, probably like 8, 9 or 10, something like that. But when I heard it, I'd never heard anything like that. You know, something that was. Can you think of that album now? Do you know it well? Do you know that album well?
I don't know it really well, no.
Well, if you listen to the album, there's a lot of the same chords in it, and a lot of the same chord sequence, and it's a concept album, but like not in a shit way. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of, when I was a kid, it was like dreamlike. You know what I mean? I've never heard anything like that, and it completely inspired me to just want to know more about music. And I think that's when, like, got hold of the guitar and kept that guitar and just tried to learn stuff, and then I became obsessed with music from then on.
How old were you then, would you say?
I reckon I heard What's Going On, and that blew my mind completely. I reckon I heard What's Going On, I was about maybe somewhere between 8 and 10, I reckon.
Right. Wow. So what other artists inspired you then as you started to grow older and started to actually create music yourself?
When I was starting to create music, so coming from the place I come from, and I was at a bit of a weird time. I'm talking like my generation was a bit of a weird time culturally, because like we were too young for the Hacienda, Stone Roses, Happy Mondays. We just heard of that. Do you know what I mean? And we knew the songs and everything, but it wasn't our generation. It didn't speak to our generation. And then the whole thing with Oasis kind of happened after we'd already got in. So as a teenager, we used to go into town, and we used to go to places like Electric Chair, and we used to like people like Ray and Christian and stuff like that were it was basically underground hip hop, and because we were 11, 12 and 13 when De La Soul 3 Feet High and Rising came out.
Right.
And then that led on to this little, it was a bit of a subculture, and it wasn't really that popular, but people of my age really remember that whole time in Manchester quite fondly, because there was, I suppose, it was like anywhere between 15 and 18 or 15 and 20 when that was going off. And it was that kind of underground hip hop scene, and some of the hip hop coming out of Manchester. And so there was that. and also being from Manchester as well, and being a musician, there's a little bit of baggage from the past, like, oh, Manchester is a big musical city. And I always didn't want to be defined by that. I never want to sound like a poor man's Oasis or a poor man's Stone Roses. Do you know what I mean? That never appealed to me. And I kind of had my own influences as I started to make music more and more, as I started to write songs. So some of them are still my biggest influence to this day. Is like Richie Havens, not from a writing point of view, just from a performing point of view. Richie Havens is an amazing artist. He was, do you know him?
No.
Richie Havens was the guy, he opened Woodstock, so like 1969 Woodstock, he opened it basically with a guitar. He had a big poncho on, looked cool as fuck, just a bongo, got a guy on congas and another guy playing bass and guitar with him. And he opened Woodstock and he played over his thing. He improvised and wrote a load of songs off the top of his head doing that. And then he was mainly famous for playing other people's songs, but he was a gospel singer when he was a kid. So he was one of them writers, not a writer, but one of them performers that if he turned up with just a guitar and if he just sang, it wouldn't have made a difference if he had no musicians behind him, because it was just power and beauty. Do you know what I mean? So artists like him, Terry Callier, Van Morrison, it became so. I started to, as I analyse it properly now, what the artists that influenced me were from the end of the 60s through to the 70s, and it's where probably folk meets jazz and meets soul and creates that amazing mix of, really vibey and really well-written songs. So that's my thing.
Yeah, well, that is perfect into the next question, because I was going to ask you, like, how would you describe your style? Because I've listened to loads of your songs and there is something unique about it. I can definitely tell that you didn't want to be put into that Manchester box, because it's not something that I can. Obviously, I'm coming from like a hip hop background, so I don't know as many artists as you'll do in the genres, but there's just not. I don't think there's anybody that I can sort of put my finger on. I sound like that, or yeah, that's inspired from that. Like, it is a bit of a fusion, isn't it?
Yeah. I suppose it is. I suppose it is a fusion. Yeah, I think probably the roots of where I'm up to, and I'm always learning as well now. So the more I learn, the kind of better I get, and the more specific I get in terms of like my conviction and how things get put out. But I'd say, yeah. Let's say my roots, my definite roots are in soul, and then my heart like kind of lies with sort of folk music a little bit, I think, and everything in between that. Do you know what I mean? I've got like I love jazz music, or I love folk music. I love some indie music as well, and quite snobby.
I think it's good to have a vast palette, though, man. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I listen to all sorts of music. Like, if you look at my playlist, it's almost a bit like ADHD. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's sort of here, there, and everywhere. I've got Michael Jackson, and then Korn, and then Metallica, and then like Beastie Boys, and then some UK grime, and then it just doesn't make any sense, but it does to me in my head. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's the one positive thing about streaming services, and it really is that's the majority now of people's playlist. It's not genre specific, is it? Everyone's like, and I think that is a positive. I think that is a positive. I mean, how that gets distributed is another thing, because because people are less tribal now, aren't they? When I was younger, it was like I was talking to you before, is about when we was younger. Like, if you were to ask me at like between 18 and 20, I would just say, especially because at that my musical taste all kind of fused at the same time. So there was that conscious hip hop. There was like Tribe Called Quest, Common, and then there was Jill Scott and Erykah Badu and Talib Kweli and Mos Def and all these people. When I was 18 to 20, that really resonated with me, and I absolutely loved that because there was live musicians, there was jazz and soul influence, there was hip hop, which made it exciting, and that was just my thing, completely and utterly my thing. And so if you ask me then, you know, because we and like me and all my friends at that time, it was tribal. So if you ask me then, it'd be like, yeah, hip hop definitely. But now, you know, you ask it like kind of typical kind of 18 to 25-year-old what they're listening to, and it'd be like, show your phone, do you know what I mean? But just stuff that I'm picking up and stuff that the algorithm's suggesting to me, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that is probably the best thing about it. Like, you know, being able to find out new music. Like I collect vinyl. I've got loads of stuff sat here. There's too much to go through, but like this, for example, like, you know, some Wu-Tang. But like if I listen to Wu-Tang on Spotify, it'll then give me a load of other links to
Yeah.
stuff that I could check out. And I like that. And I also like if I'm looking for like vinyl, I'll listen to the track first. So like if I see a vinyl on eBay, for example, I'm like, oh, I wonder what that sounds like. I've got the ability to listen to it before. So then I don't commit to it if I don't like it. But then there's almost like that was probably a part of the excitement back in the day. Do you know what I mean? Like you didn't know what you were going to get. Like the first CD I ever bought was Dre 2001. So I didn't know what all of those songs were. I probably heard one single on MTV or whatever. And then you go through the rest of the album. So that was quite nice. And I think we've lost that part of it. It's that sort of excitement and not knowing what you're going to get. I liked that.
And that was amazing. And it was the whole anticipation, wasn't it? You know, like people have said it before, that whole anticipation of going downtown, going to your records shop, buying it, coming back. You know, like you sat there, you know, like thinking that like in the past where you don't have a device to listen to it straight away, it's mad. So you've got to wait till you get all the way home and then play it. But and in some cases you'd get something, even though there was amazing music made, but you'd get something that was probably a little bit subpar, just probably a little bit shit. But you know on first listen, but because you've gone out and spent the money and read the liner notes and all that, you'd actually give it the benefit of the doubt and listen to it as much as you could to when you say, oh, yeah, I see what they did.
That's so true. Yeah, that's so true. And I think it's probably changed the way that people, obviously it's changed the way people consume music, but in terms of being artists, I think this was one of my downfalls. And that's why I don't have as many bodies of work out as opposed to singular songs, because it got to the point where it's like you couldn't keep up with the demand of, you know, people wanting music. Like literally somebody commented yesterday on one of my videos saying, when's the next song coming out? I'm like, well, you know, and then I remember, I swear to God, Jake, right? This must have been like 2013, 2014. I had this SoundCloud account, which I've still got now. I was putting out a track every week, right? And people were on at me then going, oh, it's too much music. We can't keep up. I remember that comment. It stuck in my mind, like still to this day. And I just thought, you can't keep everybody happy, can you?
No, you can't. But it's the thing about these days. I mean, I worry, like, not worry, but I mean, I think about it like in terms of like, is content the new art? Do you know what I mean? Is content bigger than art? Because it's mad. It's mad, especially when you scroll through social media and you're like, you know, you get people that are paying for these ads, and it's like, shit, he's still on that song again. You know, like this is your like fifth or sixth. So you've got to think like these days, if you're putting music out, well, right, I'll put this song out, and I've got to think about 12 bits of content that relate to this song.
Yeah.
And for someone like me, like thinking about that, I'd be like, fuck, you know, from the beginning, that overwhelms me from the beginning. I'm like, can I do that? And I resign myself to the fact of saying, no, I can't probably.
This is the problem. You almost have to become an influencer just to get the record listened to, unless you've got a budget of thousands of pounds to pay on ads and stuff like that. Like, people don't get this, man. It's a pay-to-play scheme now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You've got. I know people have promoted forever, but like, especially nowadays, you're just a drop in the ocean. That's what I felt like. Like, you know, you're a needle in a haystack because there's so many people doing it. It's so easy for people to make music, and the songs that are going big are just BS dances, and you know what I mean. And that infuriates me about particularly hip hop because you lose the art.
Yeah.
You lose the storytelling element. Like, people don't want a really powerful story told anymore. It seems like, from my perspective, they just want something that's really catchy that they can, you know. But the problem with that type of music is it's got no longevity. It's got no, you know, you aren't picking that up and playing it in 20 years' time. There's just no way.
Well, your music becomes secondary, doesn't it? You know, you're selling yourself, aren't you, as a personality first, and then I always think could I imagine my biggest idols going, "Hey, I just wrote the banger of the summer." Do you know what I mean? I can't imagine any of them doing that.
Mm. Yeah, man, it's a sad state of affairs, to be honest, man. I don't want to like make it well depressing.
No, it is. It's crazy. It is crazy. I mean, I do believe that there's depends what you want, and it all comes down to I think what you want, and like if you feel that you're an artist, it's understanding what you want out of it, what you want out of this thing, you know.
Definitely, man. So, what is your writing process like?
It all starts musically, so it's like now at the moment I've probably got about 5 or 6 bits and pieces going on that I just can't write to at the minute for whatever reason. But that'll come. Do you know what I mean? I'm old enough to realise that'll probably come in time, and I'll get something. But usually it starts with something musical, and then I'll create a musical structure, and then I'll write to that. And then,
so do you have the concept? When does the concept come along for you?
the concept usually comes along depending on the tone of the music. Do you know what I mean? So I'm able to visualize things a lot clearer that way. You know, want to know what the tone is, I can visualize things a lot clearer.
Yeah, it almost. I'm exactly the same. Like, the music dictates what I'm going to write about.
Yeah, but also as well, what you realise, especially when you're writing to briefs and stuff like that, it really doesn't matter. So it's like that last tune that we did. Like, when it started, musically, it was nothing like the way it finished.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you think about it, the tone didn't really matter at all. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
But that I need that in order to spark inspiration. I need that kind of musical tone to dictate what I'm going to write about.
Yeah, because I always found it's much more difficult to do it the other way around. It's much more difficult for me to fit, even if it's like 2 bars or 4 bars of lyrics into something that's not into something else that already exists. You know what I mean? It's all got to sort of develop together, and I think the catalyst is the actual music. It's the instruments. It's the what emotions being evoked from it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I just thought that songwriting, you know, otherwise it's poetry, innit? You know, poets don't need any kind of like musical like stuff to be able to write poetry, do they? And I know, but saying that, it's surprising because you hear like hip hop artists and rappers that say, yeah, I've just got loads and loads of notes on my phones of lyrics and stuff. So it is surprising to hear you say that, but it makes sense, doesn't it? Because you know you've got to get that kind of feeling from that instrumentation, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely. And don't get me wrong, I am one of them people. Like, I've just actually changed phone, but on my other phone, I had like over 800 notes in there. That was bars and ideas, and it might be 4 or 8 bars or whatever. And I do go to those, but that generally happens after I've started writing something fresh to a piece of music. So or for a freestyle, for example. So if it's just like, stick a beat on and you're doing a bit of a sort of freestyle video and you need to draw for something to put into that, that's usually where that would come from. But yeah, it's interesting that you work the same way, because I wonder, it's probably similar for a lot of people, I would imagine that, to be honest.
Yeah, recording yourself becomes a little bit of a nightmare as well, because you end up you end up sort of shooting yourself in the foot with a lot of things as well, especially if you're maybe not, but I'll talk for me personally, because I'm like, so I'll have an idea for something, and especially when you've got the disposal of being able to record something for yourself. So if I put like drums down, and then I put the guitar down, the guide guitar, and then I'll put bass line down, and then put some keys down, and then I've created this tune, and then I've got this tune there, and in my head, what I'm listening to it as an instrumental, and then the whole time I'm thinking, I'm gonna fuck this up when I put vocals on it. I am gonna fuck this up when I put vocals. Do you know what I mean? And I kind of almost hold myself back from putting any vocals on it. And then you think to yourself, right, I've got to get used to this tune again now with my vocal on it, and it almost slows the process down a little bit.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, man. There's instrumentals I've heard in the past where I'm just like, that is just a piece of art on its own, man. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it would feel wrong to even attempt to record on it, because it just doesn't make sense to do that.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that, man. 100%. Well, one of my favorite songs you've ever written is the song called Seeds.
Oh, yeah.
And I just wondered where the inspiration for that came from, because as a lyricist, right, I obviously listen to that song, but reading the words as well, it's very deep. That it is very poetic how you delivered that. So I just wondered personally, where did the idea for that song come from, if you could remember?
Yeah. I can remember. I can remember really well. So it was. I've always had this bit of a thing, me. That's it's basically haunted me. It still does now. And I watched. I saw this thing. It's a guy called Bruce Lipton. Have you heard of him?
No.
It talks about his cells and all that sort of stuff, and how, even before you're born, you're pretty much predetermined how you're going to turn out, just by looking at your environment, your parents and stuff like that.
Right.
And so I was, that troubled me a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Thinking, fuck, well, if it's already predetermined, how do I get out of this shit? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
and so that's what that song's about. It's essentially about my dad. It's about wasted talent, and it's about unrealized talent, and desperation and ego, and how all that stuff can get in the way from you just being authentic. And that's what that was about.
Wow.
And I'd never written a song about that before. Never ever. But I kind of nailed it. But for me, people like that song. But for me, from a musical point of view, I don't really get that excited about that song, because it's quite simple. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
musically, I don't really get that excited by it.
Right.
But it is quite an honest song.
Yeah. It's a very deep message, that, man. And to hear you say that, it makes more sense now, because like, I think to me as a listener as well, that maybe is why it goes back to what we were saying before about, like, it is very stripped back, but it is quite straightforward as well. It's easy to listen to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I could have that on any time and just be able to appreciate it. I think some songs from any artist, you've got to be in the right mood, aren't you? Whereas,
Yeah, of
like,
course you have, yeah.
because I think of things quite deeply as well. There's one lyric you said, "Damn this rotten earth. What's the use in planting seeds I'll never turn?"
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah,
That'd get a reload in the grime fucking world. You know what I mean? Like, it's a really deep bar, man. So yeah, I really love that song, man. So Emeli Sandé, how did that happen? You went on tour with her?
Yeah, there's like a bigger story to that, really. So it's but around that time, I wasn't like I was on tour with Emeli Sandé, but I was also supporting like other artists that were big at that time. So I was supporting James Bay. Do you remember James Bay's?
Yeah.
I think he's still doing stuff in it. So I was supporting James Bay, Animal Collective, Jake Bugg. I was supporting all these artists around that time. But my music has always done a little bit of a start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. Always, in terms of like career progression and where I was going, it's always done that. So I started like it really kicked off. My music really kicked off in the early 20s when I got married, and like Kelly was like, like no more fucking about. You've got to do something with this now. You have to do something with it. And at the time, the momentum was crazy. So, we found two guys at Playbills, got a bass and a bass player and a drummer, and then we had loads of people coming in and out of the band and stuff like that. The bass player and a drummer, like really dear friends, love them to bits. And then Kelly played as well and sang. And so, what we used to do back then is I just used to write constantly, and all it was just about like we had about 5 or 6 different sets for different moods. Do you know what I mean? And it was like, I'll just write another tune for this set, or we've got a gig here on there. Is it a big, small venue? What kind of venue is it? What kind of artist? Or we'll do that set and we'll stick that new song in there. We just had this massive like catalogue of songs that we just go through and play. And we could never record properly. So when I was like that age, the goal for me, I never thought to myself, I'm going to be rich and famous. That was never the goal for me. The goal for me was, I hope one day I get to the point where I've got enough money to make the album of my dreams. That was my only thing. And some of my peers and the music press would speak about me favourably. That was the only thing I was asked about. So we just go out and play. We didn't really have the money to record. So everything that we recorded was just live sessions. We just went into the studio, just played as quickly as we could and got out there. And we knew when we booked gigs, we'd pack everywhere out. And eventually, we just got this momentum, and people would come and they'd just come and see. They'd come and see us, like industry people would come and see us. So first, I mean, we took a couple of trips down to London, and there was a guy there who managed us. And he's quite a big manager because he had quite big links to. I think I was his only artist at the time that he was managing. But back then, when you're young, you think like a manager's like the answer to all your problems. You know what I mean? You kind of think to yourself, "All right, I can just concentrate on playing and just being creative and getting out there and just doing what I do best, which is music." Which that's not the case, that's not the case at all. It's where the hard, boring work starts, the kind of work that you avoid when you're an artist, you know what I mean? Yeah. So we had him as a manager, and then, momentum really, really picked up, and then for whatever reason, like I can't remember why, but he came out of doing artist management and he went back into his old job at, I think Sony BMG or whatever, and he started working for SYCO, and he was like, "You should write songs for SYCO. That's what you should do." So I was like, "All right." I didn't know how to record then. Like home recording was very much in its infancy. Do you know what I mean? Well, no, it wasn't actually. Like it was more. It wasn't in its infancy. It was just more involved than there is now. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't as good. It wasn't. You didn't have everything at your disposal as you've got now. So I hooked up with like some other kind of Manchester producers and stuff like that, and said, I've got this thing, and I'm going to be writing songs for SYCO, and they helped me out with production and stuff. So, so I wrote some songs for them, and then moving on. he was no longer my manager, so we had another manager. Went and did a tour of the States. So went up to went and toured California, and we basically did that because we had a load of gigs booked. There was some interest in America. There was like me and Kelly were like sat in Hollywood once, and like this guy came. He was Michael Jackson's lawyer. came to the house, and we didn't have any money. We just had this, and the only thing we had in the house was this microwave mashed potato. So me and Keller just sat in this big mansion that we had to ourselves, eating microwave mashed potato, talking to Michael Jackson's manager. And we're like, we'll be in San Francisco tomorrow playing this game. Yeah, we did that.
That's madness.
Yeah, it was a mad tour that. And then, we finished off at that gig in San Francisco, and all these lawyers came, or like these music lawyers came and stuff. And split up from my manager on that tour. Some like differences of opinions and all that sort of shit. Then we came back, and so this is what I'm talking about with the stop start. So like, so I started on my artist career, and then it turned into a writing career, and then it stopped because I kind of thought to myself, this is bullshit. I'm just like, it was like painting by numbers. Writing for SYCO was like painting by numbers. There was like a blueprint of songs that you wanted to hit, and like that was like, it wasn't for me. I couldn't do that. The creative process of writing was completely taken out, So right. I got a little bit of delusioned with that and just stopped, and it's never a good idea to do when you're doing music, because it's all about momentum. It's all about carrying on. It's all about, keep knocking at the door, keep submitting. But I didn't. I was younger then. Just stopped and sacked it off. Then worked with that manager. The next manager, we did a big tour, loads of industry, interest again, gigs still being packed out, people from major labels and independents coming down to the gigs, and I ended up getting a little bit disheartened with it again, and it's stopping again, and then maybe a year or two later, I decided, we'll go into the studio. I think I had about £600 saved up or whatever, and I said, right, so me, Kelly, Liam, Jay, let's go down to the studio. I've got like these 11, 12 songs or whatever they are. Let's get them recorded. So recorded them, put them out, and then somebody heard them. So somebody from Virgin heard them and said, yeah, great. Do you want to come in and do you want to write for our artist? And I was like,
really?
Yeah, all right, yeah. And so went down to meet them there, went down to EMI, and I think Virgin was in EMI at that time. So went down to and I was like, right, okay, I can do that writing, but I've also just recorded this as well, so have a listen to this, because I'd like to do this live, and I'd like to record it better. It's how I used to be all the time, because the momentum was crazy, and it like an idea would stay in my head for like 5 minutes, and then if anyone mentioned it, like, oh, Jake, what about that song that we did last week? Do you want to do that? I'm like, that's last week now, bollocks to that, let's just carry on doing that. And that's what I was like back then. So I was like in that meeting saying, well, look, these are the songs now, and I've got this idea, and I want to re-record it, but I want to re-record it with real plate reverb, and I'd like to do it all in the room together, and I'd like to do this, and I'd like to do it in this studio, and I'd like to take it on the road and stuff like that. And so the guy said, well, all right, well, let me manage you. And so, he was managing me for a bit, and I got back on that new artist thing, because they do that thing where you're a new artist, like they delete everything that came before. Any trace of you on the internet, they just delete. So he's like, all right, well, delete everything from your past, and now we'll start again. And this is like a new sheet. So from that, met Emeli Sandé and met all these other people that were coming up at the time. I just ended up supporting them and being like a kind of go-to support artist for these people.
Wow.
Yeah, and did that for a while.
So what happened after that then? Like, did you tour with those artists just in the UK, or was it like worldwide?
Just in the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah, just all in the UK, yeah.
So I'm interested to ask, just on a personal level, right? So when you're being a songwriter for a record label, just going back to what you said about like the creativity is taken out, I assume given some sort of brief, like how does that work in terms of like paying you as a songwriter? Do you get credited? Do you get royalties? Do you get an advance? Do you get like how does that process work?
So no, we weren't given any when I was writing for SYCO, we weren't given any kind of advance. We were just given like expenses, if you used other musicians and stuff like that. So
Right.
you're basically pitching ideas, but to get your foot in the door anyway is quite difficult. But you like pitching your ideas, and I think you've got to think I was young then. I was quite young then when I was doing that, and because I've been in SYCO office like loads. I've been in there loads of times, and the guy that was managing me at the time worked at SYCO. He wasn't a young guy; he was an old guy, and he's been in the music business forever. And his brother owned my favourite independent record label of all time. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, wow. And I had this direct line to him. So because I was young and because I was naive and I had this direct line to him, I thought everything I write is going to be gold dust and somebody's going to get that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I realised the size of the amount of writers and the amount of producers that are actually bidding for this work. You know what I mean? Tons of them. And I think at that time, that fucking, I can't remember his name, Max something. He was like he wrote all the hits at the time, and then there was like some writing team in Copenhagen. They were going to send me to Copenhagen to write with him. Some writing team in Copenhagen, and then there was some writing team based in London that I can't think of that were writing all the Girls Aloud hits and stuff like that. And it just becomes a painting by numbers sort of situation, and at the end of it, you don't know if you've got it or not. Anyway, you don't. Even when you're listening back to the song, you're like, yeah, it sounds like a Leona Lewis song, because that's. I was writing for basically anyone that won X Factor. I was writing for them, so I used to write and think, yeah, it sounds like something Leona Lewis had sang, and that sounds like a number one. That sounds like it'd be on the radio, but you just put it out there, and or I just put it out there. Who knows? Who knows? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I just ask because like I think people don't see this side of music industry. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? They just think, oh, Drake just wrote this really good song, and now it's like, it's popping all over the world. But actually, there's loads of people involved in making a song, and you've had first-hand experience of that. And I think that, I just wanted to highlight that it's a bit like producers as well. Like producers are sort of like, particularly in hip hop, like you don't even really hear the people have obviously started putting like tags on their beats and stuff for that reason, because I think they were just getting like just like a secondary thing. But without the music, you've said it yourself, without the music it isn't a song. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. And I think for me, like, so if I look back on them, like with the like the benefit of age now, so if I look back on that time, that was so far off the path of why I originally started. Like, someone like me should never go. I should never be near a major label. Me, never, ever.
Why?
Because I was watching something that like typified and summed up major labels really, really well. So if we take so if we take Beyonce, right? I know it's so she is a megastar because she's concerned about a vocal, dance moves, outfits, stage, what do you call it, fucking stage set or whatever. The brand of Beyonce, she's bothered about all that before music. And she's completely and utterly focused on that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
and that is that a major label is the place for someone like her, or anyone else you can think of. You know, like, I don't know, anyone else that you can think of that enjoys singing and dancing. And I think if you want a major label deal, you're a person that would really enjoy fame to the point where it's claustrophobic. You love singing, you love dancing, you're quite happy with being told what to do, and you'll basically sing any banger. If that's you, and there's nothing wrong with that, but if that's you, then by all means be open to major label offers. If that's not you, if you feel like an artist, if you feel like you need a little bit of time to kind of discover yourself, what kind of artist you want to be, if you want to, if you know in the future you're going to do this great singer-songwriter album, but your next album you might want to fuck about and do an electronic instrumental album and stuff like that, stay away from major labels, because they'll give you a really, really hard truth about how the industry is in that market. You know what I mean? But that's not to say that just because you don't go with a major label, there's no point to your music. You know what I mean? I'm an indie label person. Do you know what I mean? I'm difficult
Yeah.
creatively. I'm difficult. I'm annoying. Every manager that's ever worked with me has found me really irritating. I've argued with every single one. I've fallen out with every single manager I've had. You know, I've fallen out with A&R people. I used to come out of meetings like, ask Kelly, you know, speak to Kelly. I used to drive all the way down to London to a major label meeting. At them times, Kelly didn't used to come in with me, but she'd be sat outside, whatever it cost her, and I'd come in and go, bunch of dickheads. And
what? Sorry to cut you off, but why was it so frustrating for you being in that environment? What was it that they were saying to you to make you respond in that way?
I suppose the one that sticks in my head the most is, so I went to RCA. So RCA were interested because they had. I mean, this is how far off the mark it was. Like, the amount of times that I roll my eyes and look at the scene and go, really? So the reason why RCA were interested is because they had like a subsidiary in RCA that had signed Newton Faulkner. Do you remember Newton Faulkner?
Yeah, I met him actually at Abbey Road.
Yeah, I've no doubt that he's a nice guy, right? But what they did is they said, you play acoustic guitar sometimes, so does Newton Faulkner, so let's fit you in there. So we went and sat in RCA, and the A&R guys that brought me in, I'm a manager, that was great. You know, they were doing a great job and this, that, and the other. I remember speaking to the guy that was like heading up RCA now, and he said to me, I just worked for Universal. This is him talking to me. He said, I was working for Universal and I wanted to come over here because at Universal, we've been ignoring artists like you for longer than 10 years. And that's why I wanted to come to RCA and concentrate more on artists like you. So I was like, yeah, like, this guy's kind of like, is talking to me. Yeah, I get that. And then they started talking about my demographic and what my market would be. And then they started saying, well, okay, Jake could be the next but urban version of Ben Howard. And I
remember you telling me this story, yeah.
But this is one of the conversations that sticks in my head. I've had a million of these. Do you know what I mean? I've had a million of them, and it was like I met a lawyer once that said to me, it was part of like this major label thing, and I met him in a major label. I met a lawyer once, and he said, "You're like," he said, "Well, how we could market you? You're like a ghetto version of Badly Drawn Boy," and I was like. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Badly Drawn Boy. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Ben Howard, but I don't want to try and recoup £150,000 being the urban Ben Howard. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
And I
So that
don't,
was what they offered you.
yeah, well, whatever the advance was at the time, I think the advance that they were offering me at that time was a lot smaller than that. It wasn't that. It was like whatever it was, but it was smaller than 150 grand. But I could just the whole time I was thinking, I was like, the whole appeal of Ben Howard, right, is that he's got his section of audience, and they're the people that go to that festival in Cornwall, and they're usually young kids without a care in the world, with a mum and dad that have probably grown up listening to the mums and dads Bob Dylan records and Cat Stevens and stuff like that, and it's their generation's version of that. It's nice. It's nice music. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I wasn't like like with songs like Seeds and stuff like that. That was wrote around at that time. I think I might have even played that in that RCA meeting because they made me bring my guitar in. I might have even played that. My songs weren't nice. It wasn't like about sunsets on the beach and stuff like that. It might have sounded similar to people around that time. Do you know what I mean? But from a lyrical point of view, it wasn't nice. So I was thinking, well, that's his appeal. My appeal isn't to be like that, but have my dirty ass lyrics on it. Do you know what I mean?
What I can't understand, man, is if you have got into a position, right, where you're sat in that office with them people from a major label, and they're saying to you, right, essentially, Jake, great music that you've put out, we love it, yeah, we can do something with it. However, we see you this sort of way. You should go like this sort of, and it's like, why do you get somebody into a room, an artist who's as an artist, I'm very sensitive about my music. I'm very, I critique it myself, my own worst critic, so forget what other people think. But like, sat there and you're trying to change that artist into essentially into somebody else. Why even get you in the room to market you a way that's already been? I just don't get that, because surely your unique selling point is you.
I don't know. To be honest, I don't really know myself, and I can't say with any certainty why they do that. And when I was younger, like you, I used to have this line of like, well, you got me in here because you liked it in the first place. So why get me in here and what changed me? Do you know what I mean? That was my line. I used to say stuff like that all the time. I'm thinking about it, reflecting on it, and I don't know this for certain, but if you end up being like head of A&R at a record label, you've basically started as A&R. Do you know what I mean? And if you've managed to climb that, because a lot of A&R people, they start on like an internship where they're given no money whatsoever, and your longevity is based on, all right, go and work with this band for a bit, and then you work with this band for a little bit, and you're the A&R person for that band, and that band does quite well. So the record label says, who's the A&R person that worked with that band? They'll say, right, well, it was Billy. And they go, right, well, Billy can stay with us. And then that's how A&R people progress. But I think the problem with that is that A&R person that was working with that band on that album that had quite a lot of success, they actually think that the reason that particular album was successful is because they were involved. Do you know what I mean? And I think they become a little bit the victims of like their own self-importance, where really we know that great albums are made by great artists. Great albums aren't made by great A&R men. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
But in that record label world, the A&R kind of take credit for it. And also as well, what the major labels do a little bit is they see something that's successful, like a trend that's successful, that's usually started by an independent underground artist. Do you know what I mean? And they try and replicate that, and then they'll just kill it and kill it and kill it and kill it and kill it, and then look for the next thing. And I think that's where the problem lies. It's people that have opinions, and they think, because I've had a relative amount of success with these very popular bands in the past, my opinions are valid. And let's have a look at something that's doing really, really well, and any new artist that comes in, let's try and use that model so that they can do well as well and get, I can do a decent amount till for the record label, but it doesn't always work like that. And it's always original ideas that blow up, and it's always the artist, and they're usually always from an independent or an underground background that blow up big.
Yeah, that's a strange perspective anyway, isn't it? Because music is always changing. It's always been like that since the beginning of time. I think one artist is inspired by another artist, and then it sort of over time develops into something else. It's built on the foundations of something that's already there. But
yeah, it's a little bit less so now, though, don't you think? It's like,
yeah,
because like music, like when I was younger, like the trends and like sort of fashions in music used to turn around really quickly. And like I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, how long have trap beats been around now?
no, you're right.
Like,
Actually,
like this is going on forever. This now.
I think they go in seasons, don't they? And those seasons have just gotten like longer and longer.
Yeah, yeah,
like it was. What was it like? From the garage scene and the D&B scene and all that pirate radio came grime.
yeah.
Grime had its run for a certain amount of years, and out of that, you got like dubstep came along throughout that time as well. That might have been just a bit before grime. Actually, it was around that time anyway.
But and then you had all the offshoots of that, which is like the dancehall thing, that happened years ago. But I mean, that's still happening now.
That's right. Yeah, you're right.
And so there's not a quick, there ain't a quick turnaround now. And I think that's probably one of the biggest problems with like new music now is that in major labels there's a lot of writer producers rather than artists. So
yeah,
they're just churning out what they know will sell. Do you know what I mean? Their best sellers, their biggest sellers, and the cycle just keeps repeating without anything new being injected into it, I think.
Well, yeah, I agree, and I think this is why I can't even listen to radio anymore, man. It makes me want to like rip my own eyeballs out and throw them across the road. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's just like, because I've heard that, it's like you're saying, with that format, that structure, heard it a billion times. And for some reason, I don't know why this is, but the older I get, I don't know whether you're like this, but we listen to certain frequencies in a song. I find that certain frequencies really agitate me, particularly higher frequencies.
Yeah.
So there's certain songs on the radio that are just like this drony, really high pitched vocal all the way through it, and it makes me feel physically wound up. Do you know what I mean? I'm just like, what is that about? I don't know why that is.
No, everything's too loud now anyway.
Yeah.
I sound like a proper old man saying that, like it's too loud. But it is, but everything is too loud, isn't it? Everything's too loud. And like the amount of songs that I don't listen to radio ever. I do listen to radio if I go out and I forget my phone and I can't. Do you know what I mean? I can't, like, if I go out in the car and I forget my phone, and then it's just the radio that's on, not like what I'm choosing. And there's that many, like, I'll listen to songs. There's that many there's that many vocals from sample packs all over tunes now.
Yeah, massively. Yeah, I mean, what they started doing, man, do you know, like with the sampling game, it was like, obviously they realised it costs so much money to get the rights to use a sample from an old song, so they just started recreating the samples.
Yeah.
So just like replaying it in like the Ableton or whatever you're using, and it sounds a bit like it. You still got to give that label and stuff who's got the rights to that song some money, but it's nowhere near the amount to get clearance of a sample.
Yeah.
They just started ripping off samples that way. There's a certain word for it. Is it reinterpretation or something like that?
Yeah.
It's madness, man.
It is madness, and and I think, and when you go back to people that are making these sounds for sample packs and stuff, and it's, going back to like my experience with like being around major labels and stuff, it's you've got to think about the why did I start doing music, and it wasn't to write 1 million songs a week in the hope that one of them would get picked up, and all that stuff I think if you think of income first, like what can I get out of, how much do you think I can earn out of the amount of work that I'm putting in musically here? I think if you start thinking about income first, that like in between creating and thinking about income, your authenticity gets lost somewhere there.
Yeah,
Do
definitely.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, because you're chasing it for the wrong reasons, aren't you? And then it just becomes really stressful. It's like doing something you love and then it becoming a job. It's like it's not the same thing
It
anymore.
just becomes fucking out, and that was the whole point. Like when, especially when I was doing that writing thing, it was just like fucking admin.
Yeah.
It just became like doing admin, basic admin. I
Mm,
didn't want to do that.
yeah.
Um,
So what would you say is your favorite part of being a musician and an artist? What's the best part about it?
I suppose the creating. I mean, I'm constantly like I've said to you, my whole like music career has been start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, and they've all been like little learning journeys. And the reason I've stopped is because I've got disillusioned with something. It wasn't what I thought it was, so I'll start again. But in
Mm,
answer to your question, the thing you like about music is that I constantly create projects for myself, whether I like it or not. I can't turn that off. I've I've always got creative projects happening in my head, and I can't turn that off. And the process of creating them and seeing them through to the end, it makes me a better person. It makes me an easier person to live with. It
mm,
just makes me a better person because I think um, I need to be doing something. I need to be creating, and when I am creating, I am in a happy place. You know what I mean?
yeah, 100%. I think you know when you haven't done it. Like, obviously, I've stopped performing now, but I haven't stopped making music. And I think after a certain amount of time, if I haven't written anything, you can tell. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I notice myself. They'll notice. My wife will notice. Like it's so ingrained in you. It'd be like not getting up on the morning. It's just a really strange thing. I don't think you ever stop fully. You can't come away from it, can you?
No, no. Yeah, it's exactly the same for me. I mean, I feel like in my life, it's like especially if you let life take over and you just you're getting on with stuff, and then you have a quiet minute and you realize like fucking hell, like I don't feel like me, and it's because you've let life take over. I mean, I've always felt a little bit like it, like I'm walking along this wall constantly, and then one side is purpose and the other side is just like I'm just depressed and it's just despair, and at any moment I can slip off that wall. Do you know what I mean? But
Mm.
if I'm in the middle and I can see both sides quite clearly, I'm quite happy in that. You know.
Yeah, I think that is probably the key to a successful life. I suppose. Like it's a balance in it. You're constantly trying to balance. You know, like what you said before about the stress of the money, and you focus on the money. We're in a catch-22. We're always going to be in that because we need money to survive. That man-made created thing that everybody has to have in their bank account, um, in order to sort of live. You can't not have it. So where is the balance? I think it's like a lottery ticket. The music industry, I think, in my opinion, it's like, and when people see exactly what it's like I never got to the stage that you got to, but I've done a hell of a lot of research and I got far enough in to see what I thought it was. And even at that point, it wasn't what I anticipated. So I never sort of lost love for creating music, but it was all that side of it. Because I think some people think, oh, I need a record deal and that's the be all and end all. But actually, it's like, it is a bit like the Matrix, isn't it? Once you get into it, you think, what? I can't believe this is it. I can't believe that I've thought like the music industry was like this all along, and it's just nothing like it. Um, so like, what would your advice be to someone who is wanting to get into the music industry and they don't have this knowledge right now? Like they've not spoken to you, they've not heard this. What would you say to them?
Do you know what is? I think probably probably the best advice that I never got, which I probably wish I would have got, which was why are you doing it? Why are you doing music? And working out why you're doing it, and um, choosing a path that aligns with why you're doing it. Because there's always going to be some shit. Do you know what I mean? There's always going to, like, you see really good independent artists that try and write a hit, just to try and bring a few quid in. So there's always going to be some shit that you're going to have to deal with. But if you know, if you know about, I mean, because the industry just isn't major labels. It's, it syncs. It's, like streams is like pretty pointless now, but it's like syncs and all sorts of stuff and things you can do apart from that, like producing and writing and even DJing and session and all that sort of stuff. That you're still within the industry there. You know what I mean? So it's looking at why you want to be an artist and choosing a path that aligns with that. And that's just through the mistakes I've made, because what I've done is that I've always known why I wanted to be an artist, and when I was younger, I thought I can't say no to opportunities, so I was constantly going down paths that were just not for me, didn't align with what I wanted.
Yeah, I guess, and it's a big risk at that moment, isn't it? Because I was exactly the same as you. I pretty much took on every single opportunity that I could, because you don't know where it's going to lead to. But actually, is that beneficial to you as an artist in your career? It's a difficult one, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And it's like I was saying before, it's if you're the kind of person that major labels love, then if you want to sing and dance and travel the world, and you're quite happy with being incredibly famous and all that sort of stuff, then go for it. Go for a major label. Roll the dice, take a shot with it. You might become a megastar, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it's not for me, and it never was for me. That.
Yeah, and I think that the point of this conversation really in this regard is not to put people off. Like, I don't want people to be put off by it. I just want people to know the reality of it.
Yeah.
Because you've been in there and seen it with your own eyes. And I think that's really, really powerful for people coming into the industry. Like, that's really amazing advice as well. Like, what are you here for? Like, why do you want to do it? Are you happy with just doing it for a few quid and, gigging here and there and putting out your own projects? And like, for me, why I got into it was it was like a therapy. Do you know what I mean? It was for me. It wasn't for anybody else, but it became about everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's what I didn't like. It's like, oh, what's the expectation of me now? What if this song doesn't get as much views, and what if people don't like this as much? And it just becomes an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. And you start second guessing your ideas all the time and stuff. And it's, but that's part of creativity. I mean, because in anything that you do that's creative, there's, at the end of the day, you're going to put it in front of people, aren't you?
Yeah.
And the difficulty when labels are concerned is they compound your own insecurities as well.
Right.
Because they'll rip stuff apart, and they'll constantly tell you that you're not really good enough for that, and that's that, and that's not really good enough. And if we look at an artist that was successful, see, they did it a little bit different, they did it better than you. So what we want to do is more like that, not sound exactly like that, but be as good as that. And so they kind of break you down. Is that, like, from a self-esteem, you don't need that amount of input, from A&R people and stuff like that. It's, it is crazy. It's crazy. And also, not to put people off, and I'm only talking about my experience. When I was in that world, it felt like a world not for working class people. Do you know what I mean? Didn't feel like a world for me. Because when I was doing that, I had a full-time job as well. I was working. I had rent to pay, I had bills to pay. I was, I didn't live at home with my mum and dad.
Yeah.
I didn't go to university. I didn't even go to college. I didn't, none of that. Because there was no money available for that. So when I was in that world and talking to these people, it didn't feel like a working class friendly kind of environment. Like I remember sat there, and it might have been like I was sat in Colombia. I can't remember if it was Colombia or not. I really can't remember. But I was sat talking to an A&R guy that had just done the new Liam Gallagher album when Liam Gallagher was BDI, I think. So I think it might have been his second album or something like that. So he'd A&R'd that album, and he said to me, you know what you need to do? You need to go away and do a really, really decent EP, but you need to fund it yourself rather than take a deal. So who I think you should go and see is Ethan Johns, who's like Glyn Johns' son. Glyn Johns, like
Right.
the Beatles, Rolling Stones, all that sort of stuff. And Ethan Johns is like an amazing producer. Like I love his work, But he costs about 20 grand a week.
Wow.
Maybe I'm pulling that off the top of my head. He's dear anyway, So
Yeah.
I'm working full time, thinking to myself, right? So that would be a way of me getting in. Go and doing an EP with Ethan Johns, and that's not going to happen, is it? It's not going to happen anytime soon, that. And also, like, I had a booking agent as well, and like did some amazing gigs through the booking agent. Like went and like supported one of my heroes at the time, Roy Ayres. Like Everybody Loves the Sunshine. Supported him. Played Brecon Jazz Festival. Did some great gigs. They pay you like about these booking agents. They pay you like about. They negotiate a fee for you, and it'd be about 80 quid or whatever. But they'd want commission out of that 80 quid. So I'm like driving to South Wales, all the way through the Mumbles in some shit car, like some like car from like a 1996 Renault or whatever with my guitar, me and Kelly. And then they're ringing me up saying, "Oh, you can have 25% of that fee that you got." And the fee was like 86 quid. Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
So and that's where you are. That's at that point where you're having conversations with you've got a booking agent, you've got a manager, you've got PR, you're talking to major labels and stuff. That's the point where you're at, and you need that. You need something kind of behind you to be able to sustain that and propel that. And also, even though it wasn't right for me, and at the time I just thought I don't want all this bullshit. I wouldn't have been able to sustain it anyway. Do you know what I mean? From a financial point of view, I wouldn't have been able to sustain that.
That's crazy as well, because it's like, how were you supposed to do that? Do you know what I mean?
Well,
like,
I didn't. I just took the whole money. I just took the money, but it ultimately led to me like the booking agent kicking me off the roster. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it was a good booking agent as well. They had like megastars.
Well, it's all lessons learned in it, man. And I think
yeah.
I'm grateful for you telling your story, man, because I think other people are definitely going to benefit from that as well, and that's then part of your legacy as well. Do you know what I mean? Like you was able to pass that on, and that's really powerful, man. What's your ambitions for the future then, Jake? What are you planning next? What's next for you?
I've got a lot of my ambitions now are they're all creative. They're all music driven. I'm just going to keep making music, keep putting it out, and I'm a lot easier about things now. So I don't see, like, I'm not kind of fixated on where I see this going or where I see that going. I'm just gonna put it out, and I think, as long as I'm creating, as long as I'm making music, as long as I'm scratching that itch and keeping myself healthy by doing it, I'm happy to do that. Yeah.
I think that's the best place to be.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah.
I think ultimately you maybe turned things down and it didn't work out at the time, but now you are actually winning because you're in that position. Do you know what I mean? It might not be millions and millions of pounds, but what is that worth really when there's always going to be another issue, isn't there? And I think, if that did happen, maybe you would have hated music, maybe you would have resented it, maybe you wouldn't like creating it anymore because it is looked at as an asset, as a product.
That's a bit. That was it was the main reason for the big stop start in my career. That was it. It was because I got to a point where like I was just sick and tired of doing music. Because that was what it was all about. It's like, well, if this is what it's all about, I don't want to do it.
Yeah, man. Well, so where can people find your music then, Jake? Like, have you got any
Spotify, Jake Mattison, all the usual places, Jake Mattison. My Instagram, Jake. What is it, Jake Mattison? Is it 7? Jake_Mattison 7. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put it up on the screen, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll have links to Jake's music and all of that information in the YouTube version of this podcast anyway.
Nice one.
Please make sure you check Jake out, because his music is very powerful. I'm going to cut some music into this as well, probably. So if, obviously, with your permission, I ain't trying to get sued and that. You know what I mean? But it's not to sue me for, bro, unfortunately. But yeah, Jake, thank you so much for this, man. And keep going. The people need to hear your music, your message, man. So please keep making it.
Oh, I appreciate you, mate, very much. Thank you for having me on.
No worries. Take care, man.
And you, take care.